to readjust.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kenneth Jackson. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much for this invitation. I really enjoyed the food. I've seen some friends I hadn't seen in a long time. When Steve called me about coming down here, you know, my first thought went to Wallace and Tom and my wife. We tag team each other a lot. And I asked her, I said, "Hon, what was the guy's name from Sanford? He used to always come up to Fairview and anyway, I can't think of the group right now. And he always had 2 or 3 newcomers with him." And she said, "I don't know. I remember who you're talking about. I think his name started with M." So 3 days later, she comes to me and she said, "Mac." So what's his last name? She said, "I don't know." So I'm taking a nap this afternoon and I wake up and I hear the shower. And I said, "Honey, you hear me?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "It was Conyers." So it took us about a week to figure out his last name, and that's something that happens when you get old. My sobriety date's April the 1st, 1981, and I haven't had to take a drink since that day. I had no intention of quitting drinking. I didn't know. I truly believed that I didn't believe in God. I was between a rock and a hard spot. I didn't know which way to turn. I'll tell you a little bit about growing up. I come from, my father was a chronic alcoholic and mean and vicious to go with that. I tell everybody that I came from a mixed marriage. My father was a flaming alcoholic. My mother was a Pentecostal holiness. Boy, you need to get into conversations with them too. By the time I was 10 years old, I was convinced I was going to burn in hell forever. I don't know if any of you ever been in one of those preacher meetings or not, but they can get kind of erratic. But by the time I was old enough not to have to go to that church, I didn't go anymore. I chose not to. When I was 15 years old, my dad a fella got hold of him with a straight razor and changed his mind about drinking. And he joined my mother's side of the family, and he was meaner then than he was when he was drinking. As a child, one of the things that stayed with me that I learned, my father might come in one night, and remember, I'm 79 years old. As a child, he might come in and he'd have a bag full of penny candy for me and my brothers. And it was fun and had candy. We'd get out on the floor and shoot marbles, and life was good. And the next night he would come home and you go running up to him to say, "Hey, Daddy," he's liable to slap you all the way across the room, depending on what kind of liquor he was drinking. And I grew up with the inability to trust anybody or anything. And I don't know why, but that's the way it was. I didn't believe anybody could be 100% trustworthy. When I was 15 years old, I'm going in the wrong direction. I kept getting expelled from school, getting in trouble. And, I got into it with my dad one Sunday morning, and he hit me. And when I rolled out from behind that wood stove, I come out with a stick of stove wood, and I decided he won't never gonna hit me again. And we went at it pretty hard, and the result of that was his shotgun had more power than my stick of stove wood, and I had to leave. And I promised my mother that I would graduate from high school. I got a room over the drugstore in the little town where I grew up in, and I made it. I had 3 jobs. I swept the post office every morning, worked in the welding shop after school, and delivered groceries on Saturday on a bicycle. You could just call in the little store there in town and I'd take your groceries out for you. My first experience with alcohol was a spiritual experience. I was on an all-state basketball team. We won the state championship, and I was supposed to go to Durham to receive an award. And I didn't have a driver's license. I went with 15 and a half. And a buddy of mine who was a senior in high school was going to drive me up there, take me to Durham from the little old town I lived in. And on the way up there, I got scared. And I said, no, Bobby Ray, let's go back. I can't do this. He said, you're going to be fine. I said, look at me, Bobby Ray. This is the best clothes I got, what I got on. This is what I have to wear to the welding shop and to the post office to sweep the floors. I ain't going to go up there and embarrass myself and nobody else. He said, you're fine. I said, if you don't take me back, I'm going to get out and walk back. He said, reach under that seat there and there's a paper bag. Just take your little sip of that and you'll be all right. I had never drank anything in my life. Now, just like tonight with that wonderful meal, I overate and it's your fault. I've always had difficulty with portions. I can never get the right portion of anything. And I twisted the lid off of that thing and it was great vodka. And I took me a big old drink of it and it went down and come up and went down and come up. It was coming out my nose. I think it was coming out my eyes and ears. But it went all down the front of my shirt. And Bobby Ray saying, look, slow down, just sip on it, you're going to be fine. And by the time I got to Durham, which went about 12 miles from where we were at when I started on that bottle, I had drank most of it. Bobby Ray was about 5'10", with 135 pounds. We changed shirts. And I couldn't button his. It wouldn't fit me. And I totally embarrassed myself and anybody that knew me that night, but I learned something. That night I learned that if I had to face any type of difficulty on anything, all I had to do was take a drink, and I had all the confidence and security that I needed. I would never be alone again. I found something that I could trust to make me be who and what I wanted to be. I graduated from high school, went down to Campbell College on a scholarship. I couldn't make it down there. Grades were okay, and I did well on the basketball team. But I couldn't adjust to the maturity level that everybody around me was. I dropped out. Called my dad, first time I'd talked to him in years, and I called him and said, I tried to get my mother to sign for me to go in the Navy, and she wouldn't do it. I called him and asked him would he do it, and he said, yes, sir, maybe that'll make a man out of you. And that didn't work out well for me. I came up on a court-martial, and they gave me an opportunity to resign or to be tried, and I took the easy way out. It had a lot, that just messed with my ability to have any self-confidence in myself whatsoever. Drinking took care of that. All I had to do was take a drink, and I was on the same level with anybody. I don't care where I was at. I don't know if we were talking about work, sports, intellect, whatever it was. I would present myself way beyond my capabilities. I got in some pretty serious trouble, and we had a judge in Raleigh, and he got to where he knew me on a first name basis. And Judge Winburn, the last time I seen that judge, he told me that if he saw me in his courtroom again, he'd put me where he could get his hands on me anytime he wanted to. And that night, I got into another shenanigan at a little drive-in grill out there that had curb service, and I was sitting there drinking whiskey, and I guess I made too many remarks to the curb girls going out, and one guy took offense to it, and I took offense to his offense and hit him upside the head with that whiskey bottle, and I got locked up again. And I knew Judge Wimber meant what he said, so I made a decision to go where I would be better appreciated. I had a cousin down in Florida, and I went down there, and it didn't last a week. He came to me and he said, my wife wanted to know how long it took you to get down here. And I said, about 10 and a half hours. He said, she wants to know how long it take the Wake County Sheriff to get down here. And she made me feel unwanted. So I tried to think of what I was going to do, and I remembered I had an uncle that lived out in California. I was going to go visit him for a while. And that's what I did. He said, we're not going to have none of your crazy mess. He was an over-the-road truck driver. He said, I'll teach you how to drive, and you won't have time to get in trouble. And he did. He taught me that. But I had met this girl right before I left Raleigh, and she and I were, it's kind of like our literature. She had what I wanted, and I was willing to go to any length to get it. And so, I come back to North Carolina and got her and headed for California. And we stopped in Reno, Nevada, and got married. 9 months and 14 days later, they put the prettiest, well, you seen that little baby that we was holding in here a while ago? God. 7 pounds and 14 ounces, 21 inches long, prettiest little strawberry blonde hair you ever seen. And I wish I could describe the feeling that I had holding him. And I can't. But I remember promising him, myself, standing there holding that baby in St. Joseph Hospital, I will never, ever make you feel like I feel about my daddy. And I wish I could say that I held up to that, but I didn't. We had another child, a little girl out there, and my uncle, I had talked to an agent in Atlanta, Georgia, and talked that crazy man into selling me a truck on $50 down and $50 when he could catch me. And I did well. I made enough money. We bought a little piece of land up in the mountains in California, and life was good. And I come off the road and got me a flatbed trailer, and all those cattle ranchers up there, I started hauling hay for them, and I found plenty of work to be comfortable with my lifestyle. My uncle came to me. He'd had an accident and he'd broken some vertebrae in his back and he couldn't work. And he come to me and he said, you take my truck and run it until I can get back on my feet. Just pay for the truck and you can have all the money. And I said, I'd appreciate it if you just let me make a living and he had taught me everything I knew about my career. I went back on the road, and the only way I knew how to run was wide open everywhere I went, as long as I could go. Now, I don't have any outside issues, any other type of substance that I've had trouble with. But back in those days, we're back in the 60s now, back in those days, I didn't know anybody that didn't use amphetamines. It was kind of like power steering on your truck. It just made the job easier. Well, if you drove a truck, it was all right. If you didn't drive a truck, you was taking that stuff, you had addiction problems. I didn't use them when I wasn't working. It was an easy thing to lay off of. But I came home one time, and I wasn't home very often. And when I was home, it was just to replenish my strength and get back on my feet and then go again. And my uncle went back to work, and I got back in my truck and started running cross country again. Then I came home, and my wife said, "Hon, if you're going to do this, why can't we go back to North Carolina where our kids can grow up with our families?" And she knew the reason I left North Carolina, and I told her, "We can do that, but it ain't going to be in Raleigh or nowhere near Raleigh." And so we moved back to North Carolina and up in the center of the state of Lexington, North Carolina. And things went well for a while, except my drinking was getting to be a daily thing. You know, there were days that I would wake up in a rest area somewhere and not know where I was at, and scared to get out and look at that truck. Is there going to be a scrape? Is there going to be a dent? Is there going to be a scratch? Have I hit or done something? It was getting bad. I'd get on the road and look for an interstate sign, and if I could see an interstate sign in the mile marker, I knew pretty much where I was at. And my wife got tired of that. And I came home, and once again she said, "If you're going to run around all over the country, kids are in school," and now we had a third child. She said, if you're going to do this, I'm going to go back to school and learn something. And she did, and she went up to little local Davidson County Community College. I didn't know they taught the course, but the first thing she learned was that she didn't need me. I was not normal. That was not a normal part of life. And the way I was behaved, I don't remember the last time she had seen me sober. And it just got worse. One day I came home, the locks were changed, and you know where it went from there, downhill. I would tell her, I had a little incident, I'd say, "Look, I'm gonna come get the kids on Saturday." She said, "Fine." And I would get there Saturday, but it probably wasn't the Saturday that I'd been talking about. It was probably a month or 6 weeks later. Couldn't believe anything I said. And one day I come in, and when I pulled up in front of our house, there was a newer car sitting out on the street. I thought, well, that hussy, she's been taking my child support and bought a new car. I could not face the fact that I hadn't been paying my child support. There was nothing about me you could believe or depend on. And I walked in, I didn't knock on the door, I just opened the door and walked in, and there was this guy sitting in my chair. The truth is, that was no longer my chair. The judge gave that to her along with the house and cars and everything else. I was totally unreliable. And I said, "I'm here to get the kids." And she said, "Well, we got tickets to the Icecapades." And I said, "Well, you can go to Icecapades some other time." And that guy stood up. He didn't do anything to me. He didn't say anything to me, but my self-hatred take over, and I hurt that man real bad. And I got 2 to 5 out of that. Now, I didn't have to pull all of it. I had been involved in raising funds for an orphanage up there, And the state senator was also involved in it, who was the judge at my divorce trial. But he got me out after six months and 14 days. He got me out. One of the terms was that I not go back into Davidson County, and I couldn't live up to it. My drinking just went downhill from there. My father had quit drinking, and he and my mother had moved to Raleigh. I know today, I believe today, that my mother did some of the things she did because she feared for my health, my life. But when I'd get way out there, she'd have me committed. And they'd sober me up. I went to some of the finest institutions in this state. Butner, Dorothea Dix. And I couldn't put it together. When I'd come out of there, I wouldn't be drinking. And sometimes I had no idea about this first drink thing. Nobody had said anything to me about that. I'd just go along until an occasion came up to drink. And once I started, I couldn't stop. And it just got worse and worse and worse. The last time I was locked up, Mama didn't have to do it. The Wake County Sheriff did it. I crawled up on top of the house and was shooting at cars on Western Boulevard, and I don't know why I was doing. I was drunk, I was crazy. And they took me right straight to the Sproul building over on Dorothea Dix, and that was the first time that I had been strapped down, had my mind taken away from me with drugs. And when I started coming out of that, I couldn't figure out where I was at and what I was doing and why I was tied down. And I stayed there, I think it's 45 days before they let me out. And when I got out, my mother, this doctor that she had, told her that he could stop me from drinking. And see, he gave me a bottle of pills. It was Valium. I didn't know what Valium was, but I didn't need to drink while I was taking them pills. I was just footloose and fancy free. And then a guy come through town that was a buddy of mine, and I took a drink. And then I went crazy as hell again. Locked up again. When I got out, I was trying to figure out what to do and where to do it. And I'm drinking, and I can't quit drinking. And my dad had a plumbing business, and I broke into his shop, stole his tools, and took them to a pawn shop. Bought a fifth of liquor and went out to Kilgore's, was a place there in Raleigh, a poker house. And I went out there and got in a poker game. And the liquor wasn't doing no good. I drank almost that whole fifth. And I'm a sick man right now. I weigh 164 pounds. I got a lump out my side, it looks like a cantaloupe. And I'm yellow as a buttercup. And I'm dying of cirrhosis of the liver, and I don't know it. But I broke that game that night. I took all the money, and I went to a little old trailer I had out in the woods, and I walked in that trailer, and I rode a motorcycle everywhere I went, and I carried a pistol in my boot everywhere I went. And I walked in that trailer and decided that I knew how I could fix this, and I grabbed that pistol, cocked it, and stuck it in my mouth. And there was that pawn ticket laying on the edge of my bed, nightstand by my bed. And I thought, well, the least you can do is let Daddy get his tools back. Now, my dad had got sober in 1976. and was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I would go over to his house. Let me tell you how. I would go over to his house from time to time, and I'd take a bottle and go walk in, and he'd sit down to talk to him, and I'd pour 2 glasses, and I'd push one to him. He never took it. And I knew he was sicker than I was, but he would not take that drink. And he'd just sit there and let me drink. He knew what was wrong with me, and I didn't. I had no idea. I had no clue what the word powerlessness meant. But after that night when I stuck that pistol in my mouth, I knew it was his meeting night. And I knew he got home at 9:30 and he was in bed before 10 o'clock, and it's after midnight. So I know I ain't got to tell him what I done. I just gonna tell Mother, look, you need to come over here. I got something over here to come get it. And so I called her to tell her, and he answered the phone. And he said, "What's wrong, son?" Because he was used to come get me out of jail, come get me from the emergency room, come get me out of a ditch, whatever I'd got myself into. And he said, "What's wrong, son?" And I don't know to this day where those words came from. I said, "Daddy, I tried everything. I can't stop drinking." He said, "No, you haven't. You haven't tried Alcoholics Anonymous." And I said, "What the hell's Alcoholics Anonymous?" He said, "Son, you're not going to come off of this. You're going to have some help. You can't just quit. You quit, you'll die." And he said, "There's a place over on Falstaff Road. They can help you if you go over there." So I went over there to ATC, and it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. Now I got a pistol in my belt and a sack full of money, and I'm drunk as Hogan's goat. And I'm knocking on the door. I says, "Y'all got some AA in there?" This old gal's on the phone. Boy, just a few minutes, there was enough cops showed up to take the president. And they took my money, they took my gun, and they let me go in there. And they put me in a room and said, we'll be back in a minute. Well, they didn't come back quick enough. I went into convulsions. And they ended up having to take me over to the hospital at Wake Memorial over in Raleigh. And I was in intensive care. I had blood transfusions around the clock. I was bad shape. Every night after I got out of ICU, every night this little red-headed gal come in there, and she said the same thing to me every night. She'd walk in there and look at my chart, and then she'd say, I don't know why she called me honey, but she did. She said, "Honey, when you get out of here, you go back over to where you were, them people can help you." And you got to understand, I don't know nothing about getting sober, or I didn't even know anything about wanting to be sober. But when I got out, my old truck was over there in the parking lot. And so I had to go back over there to get it. So when I got over there, it was in the daytime, and I went in and told this lady I was in here, and they had to take me to Wake Memorial, and I'm back, and what I need to do. And she said she got this counselor, and he came out there and talked to me, and gave me a breathalyzer, and said, "Well, you don't need to be here. You're not drinking. This is detox here. You don't need to be here." And I thought, what am I going to do? So I turned around and I went back out to my old truck and sat there. And I don't know if you've ever had a feeling that I had absolutely nowhere to go. I was at the bottom as low as I could get, and I had nowhere to go. And I'm sitting there thinking, what am I going to do next? I tried to crank the truck, and it cranked, but it didn't have gas to run very long, so I switched it off. And here I am stuck. So I started scrambling around in that truck. I come up with a bottle of Old Crow. And had about that much in the bottom of that bottle. And I knocked it down. Threw the bottle in the back of the truck. Walked in there and found that lady that told me I was sober. And I blowed in her breath. Will you take me now? And they did. They took me. And they put me into detox. Now, here's my physical condition. With 3 fingers of whiskey in a bottle, it took 5 days in detox to get it out of my system. My liver just did not work anymore. These people come over every night after detox. They would come over there and take you out to a meeting, take you to an AA meeting. You know, we're the guys, there's 5 or 6 of us, and we're sitting with our little bands on our arms, back against the wall. And first meeting I went to, they were arguing about getting the newcomers more involved. And one was doing this and one was doing that. And this little fellow beside him, I said, look, Bo, if you'll watch my back, I'll get us to the door. I thought they was going to fight. AA meeting, I thought they was going to fight. And we went over to Westminster one night, and I walked in there, and I got my corner against the wall, and I looked up, and there was that nurse sitting on the other side of the table. We've been waiting for you. God. Carlene Miller, she became just a wonderful friend. She put up with my insults, my insanities. She made me feel welcome when I had no right to be welcome. My behavior didn't allow it. I threw a cup of coffee at a speaker one night, called him a liar. Tell that mess in here, and I threw a cup of coffee at him. It was bad. One morning, I got the beginning of the greatest lesson I ever got in sobriety. One morning they were going through, they read out of this 24-hour book. You don't see it much anymore, but it is slammed full of these and thous. And they start reading that stuff, and I thought, is this what I'm into? Is this it? Damn Pentecostal holiness church. And I start raising a ruckus. This big guy, he was one of Tom's projects. Big guy. Matt Green, bigger than I am now. He was the one that was leading the thing, and he looked at me and he said, boy, sit down, shut up, and listen. You don't talk to a white man like that where I come from. He's a black guy. So I grabbed me a lamp. I'm going to bust his head. And he starts laughing at me. He said, who you think you're going to hit with that lamp? You can't even stand up. Well, here comes the security, and they're going to throw me out. Matt said, he's harmless. We can't help him out there. I'll take care of him. Don't you worry about him. The next morning, when I went to my room, he gave me a big book. Said, start in chapter 5. Well, you know, I'm in bad shape, and I ain't that crazy. Anything you start in the middle of, it can't be much to it. So I threw it out the window. The next morning, he brings it back. He said, you're right. Go to the first page. So I opened the thing up, and he said, no, the first page. I said, there ain't nothing on it. He said, that's where you're at. That's where you need to be. So he started asking me questions. He said, are you allergic to anything? I said, yeah. Pineapple, poison ivy. He said, what happens? I said, well, I break out in a rash with poison ivy, and I have to get a bunch of shots to get away from it. Mm-hmm. When's the last time you went playing with poison ivy? I said, I can spot it from 100 yards away. I don't get near it. He said, what happens with the pineapple? I said, I don't know, but my esophagus closes. I can't breathe, and I feel like I'm smothering to death. And, when's the last time you had a slice of pineapple? I said, you're a smart ass, ain't you? And he said, what I'm trying to tell you is, what happened the last time you took a drink? I said, I got drunk. He said, no. When did you get drunk? I didn't never get sober. I drank for, remember how long it took? How long it took for what? And I realized when he said it, until somebody put me somewhere where I couldn't get my hands on it. All those commitments that I'd had. He said, you're allergic to alcohol. And when you take a drink, you can't stop. When you get poison ivy, you get a rash. When you take pineapple, you can't breathe. You are allergic to alcohol. And he read the doctor's opinion through. We went through that for over a week, reading the doctor's opinion every day. And he talked about every paragraph in there. And the day I left there, he grabbed me by the arm and he said, boy, you say you don't believe in God. We may not have a solution for you, but you ain't never going to drink again and not know what's going to happen to you. And boy, Wallace knew Matt, and he loved that. Matt, many years later, they had to amputate his legs. He was diabetic. And I got to go get him and take him to some meetings. I'd go get him to get his dialysis. I hadn't learned what a personality change was. I did not know. All I know is you go to meetings and you don't drink. And that was it. I had a difficult time coming to believe. Let me tell you about the first meeting I went to on my own. I look it up in Hayes Barton in Raleigh. So I go to the meeting, and it's like this room here. All the coffee and everything's back there, and the chairman is up here. There's a door there and a door there. So I walked in this door, and I seen all that coffee back there, and I started that way, and I looked around, and I thought, this ain't right. Everybody in there had blue hair or no hair. I thought, I'd been to some meetings in that treatment center, and I'd seen these people getting these chips, and I look around and hell, they ain't gonna be anybody here to give me my 20-year chip. They gonna all be dead. So I start out the other door, and this little lady headed me off. She come up. She said, where you going, darling? And I said, I got to go somewhere where I can identify. She said, honey, don't you worry about identifying with us. We identify with you. You come in here and sit with me. And I thought, she's 80 years old. This old woman hitting on me. Now, I done told you what I look like. She took me by the arm. Her name was Mary Alice. 34 years sober, a little school teacher, and she took me in there and she said, now I want you to sit here with me. And when they'd start talking, I'd start talking. She said, shh, we'll talk about it later. The meeting was over and I'm getting ready to go, and she said, well, will you come back and sit with me on Friday night? I said, I ain't got nowhere else to be. So I did that. And Mary Alice was the first person that ever got me to pray. Mary Alice asked me one night on the meeting, she said, honey, when you get home, do you thank God for your sobriety today? I said, Mary Alice, I don't believe in God. You know that. She said, I didn't ask you that. I said, well, if I was to do that, I'd feel like a hypocrite. She said, honey, if we can keep you sober, we'll deal with your hypocrisy later. She had an answer for everything. One night she asked me, she said, would you consider doing something for me? I said, yeah. She said, do you love me? I said, yeah. She said, when you go home tonight, you can do it any way you want to. You can say, I don't believe a word I'm saying, but Mary Alice asked me to do this. Thank you for my sobriety today, and I'll ask you in the morning for tomorrow. She said, will you do that? I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I did exactly that. I walked in, I did not get on my knees. I backed up against the wall, folded my arms, and said, Mary Alice told me to ask you if it's all right for me to ask you if you'll help me stay sober tomorrow. And that was it. Same thing the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And Mary Alice died on April the 7th, 1984. I felt lost. I didn't have what she had, and I don't know if I wanted it or not. But I knew that there was something about being tied to her kept me over here instead of over there. And I didn't understand it. I didn't. But Susan and I went to the service in the gravesite, and we're standing there at her headstone when they're doing and there's a beer bottle on the headstone where they've been digging the grave. Susan said, boy, he didn't know what he was getting into. I don't know when I quit praying for Mary Alice and started doing it for me, but she suggested a sponsor for me. She suggested the meetings that I go to, and I did it. Now, let me regress just one bit. I've been sober about a year and a half. Knew all there was to know about not drinking, not being sober, but not drinking. All you got to do is just not take a drink. You won't get drunk. I go to a meeting over at the Hills Group one night. This pretty little old gal walks in. She's sharp. I thought, I got some room in my life for a girl like that. Find out she's going to the Crabtree group. So I go to the Crabtree group. First night in the Crabtree group, she says, would you like to get a cone of ice cream after the meeting? What the hell? Yeah, I'll do it. So we go get to Baskin and Robbins and gets a cone of ice cream. Then I start going to the Crabtree group 2 nights a week. Well, that's where she's going. And wherever she goes, I goes. I walk in one night, Al and Mac was waiting for me. Come here, boy. Leave that girl alone. Let her get sober. Leave her alone. I look over there and them women's got her in another corner. Stay away from him. He's crazy as hell. We didn't listen. 43 years we've been together. Still working today. Still working today. But let me tell you about my sponsor. My sponsor come in and says, Mary Alice tells me you're a hard case. I said, I don't know. He said, we're going to start through the book. We're going to do the steps. Okay, what you want me to do? I want you to bring your big book, your 12 and 12. Okay, I can do that. we start reading. We start at the front, at the doctor's opinion. We read both forwards, and then my book was the second edition. Then we read both forwards, and then we start in the. Every time we get to a question mark, he wanted me to answer that question. When we got to the second step in the book, we took the 12 and 12 and we read that. And we had to answer every question. I think, ain't you getting a little bit personal here, Jim? He said, you don't even know what's wrong with you. And these answers to these questions will tell you what's wrong with you. You're powerless over alcohol, but you're also in spiritual denial. And so I did what he asked me to do. And I learned in doing it. You see, the 12th step says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And when we got there, I'm asking Jim, what is this? He said, when's the last time you walked down the street and you had an opportunity to do something you knew it was wrong and you didn't do it? I said, a lot. He said, that's a spiritual awakening. He said, you think you can't find God? Look inside of yourself. Look at what's changed in your life since you went through these steps, since you went through this. He used to make me so mad, I'd call him and tell him what Susan was doing to me. He'd say, well, what do you feel like? Well, I'm mad. Why are you mad? I don't know. You don't know why you feel like that? He had a standard question for every answer, everything. Why do you reckon you feel like that? And what he was doing was putting me back in that fourth column in the inventory. Jealousy, envy, fear, resentment. It was all there, and I didn't even know how to find it until I started talking about why I hurt, why my pain was. I lost Jim about 20 years ago, but he picked out my next sponsor for me before he died. And I got a great sponsor now. He's from Dave Cook's line, and I talked to him, and I can't tell you what I've got, but I know I'm happy with it. I can't tell you how or when I came to believe in something greater than myself, but I know I do. I read every morning, 3 readings and a big book quote, and I pray the 3rd and the 7th step prayer. And I ask God to guide my thinking all day. Please help me be of service if it's your will. Active in my home group. I sponsor several guys, and those guys are sponsoring guys. I don't miss an opportunity. If it comes my way to be of service in Alcoholics Anonymous, I take it. I enjoy you people. I enjoy the crowds. I'm going to the International. I've been to several before now. I'm going to Vancouver. If I get the opportunity, I miss the 12. I miss it. Please don't be offended about what I'm about to say, but it's the truth. I miss the AA I got sober in. I miss it. You got those phone calls. You got an opportunity to go tell your story to somebody. You got an opportunity to take people to a meeting. They're coming to us now out of treatment centers, and I'm glad they're getting there, but I sure do miss the opportunity that we used to have. That's why I'm grateful Steve asked me to come down here and talk tonight. It's one of the few ways I get to be of service anymore. And I want to thank all of you for having Susan and I. And if you get up to the Crossroads group, we sure would love to see you on Monday or Thursday night. One more thing. Anybody can cut open an apple, tell you how many seeds is in it. Can't nobody tell you how many apples is in one seed.